What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, Nintendo did release their financial results for the previous quarter in their fiscal year, that being between April and June, and they had a lot to say around the sales of their games as well as the Switch, which did pass a pretty big milestone, and we're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we're going to be talking about that PlayStation 5 NVMe upgrade situation as more people have been getting access to the beta. They've been able to test out all these different drives, and we have a pretty good list that's been compiled going over the best options for your system, and we're also going to be talking about that big new update that is out now for Mario Golf. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with a big indie showcase that's scheduled for next week. We can head over to news.xbox.com, where they say the second ID at Xbox indie showcase slated for August 10th, this being at 9 a.m. Pacific time. They say during this showcase, we'll once again feature tons of independent titles, including brand new game announcements from developers and publishers such as Rebellion, Chump Squad, and others. Fans will also get a chance to see the latest and hear from teams working on The Artful Escape, Ollie Ollie World, Library of Ruina, and RPG Time, to name a few. And of course, an ID at Xbox show wouldn't be complete without some Xbox Game Pass news and announcements. And I like the idea of having these indie showcases from all three companies because it highlights, the smaller independent studios and some pretty cool ideas they usually come up with for their games. But I really like the idea of Game Pass paying out some of these developers to get their games on there right away, day one. Of course, we see then the smaller independent studios get a nice check from Microsoft, but they also get a pretty good amount of exposure as when it goes to Game Pass, people are more willing to press that download button rather than get their card out and actually buy the game, right? So it's showing up in the recent tabs, like the recently added tab that they have there, does help quite a bit for people to just check the game out and then in turn, maybe enjoy it and follow the studio along to their next project. Either way though, pretty cool to see a big indie showcase set for next week. Make sure you check it out. Also, we had talked a little bit about that EA call yesterday where they did mention that they were pretty happy with how things went with the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, but they did also mention another franchise that they have going on right now. That's right, franchise. Take a look at this here on Twitter. This from Daniel Ahmed for the EA conference call. EA will continue to invest in the Jedi Fallen Order franchise. See, we were looking at Jedi Fallen Order as a single game. It was something that Respawn did, and it seemed like it was selling well, and everyone was waiting for the loot boxes to come in, or the microtransactions, and instead, they turned around and did a free update, and everyone was still looking for the microtransactions. I know it's weird because it's EA, and we expect additional spend on top of the $60 entry fee, right, when you buy the game, but this one was different, and I mean, it's a great game. I really like Jedi Fallen Order, and I'm happy to hear them refer to it as a franchise because that means we should see a sequel or maybe just another game in that universe that they've kind of created here with these different characters. There's a lot of things they can do. I'm just happy to hear that they're going to invest in the Jedi Fallen Order franchise. I'm looking forward to what Respawn comes up with here, hopefully in the next couple years. Oh, and for fans of South Park who maybe enjoyed the previous games that we had with like Stick of Truth, it does look like there will be another South Park game coming up here at some point. We can see this over on Twitter. That was tweeted out by Jason Schreier saying, looks like the South Park people are working on a new video game. The last two were published by Ubisoft, not clear who's making this one. We can see the highlight here. This was over at Bloomberg, where it says a 3D video game that is set in the world of South Park. This was attached to a press release that just went over so much stuff that was happening with South Park. They're talking about like these animated like movies that were heading to different streaming platforms and seasons, all this stuff, but they did kind of work that in there. So I guess we will get another bigger 3D video game because we had like Stick of Truth, Fractured But Whole, and I guess we're just going to get another game in kind of that series, that idea, maybe a different kind of RPG. A lot of things they could do here. It's pretty clear it's probably still in the conceptual stage. I don't know if they've even started development on it, but good to hear we have plans for another South Park game coming up probably years in the future. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo's financial report for this previous quarter in the start of their fiscal year. Again, this being from April to June, and they have to compare themselves to themselves from last year. So what have we been saying with a lot of these financial reports that are coming out from these different video game companies? They're all expecting to see a bit of a downtrend, and especially so with Nintendo because they're going to be comparing themselves to when Animal Crossing was just absolutely on fire. So we can head over here to Nintendo Life, who laid it out pretty well. We're going to see net sales being $2.94 billion. That is down almost 10% from the previous year. Operating profit is just over $1 billion. That's down 17% from the previous year. And net profit at $846 million. That is down almost 13% on the previous year. Now, if we head over to their dedicated video game sales units, it's a page they have set up where they will continuously update like the sales for the hardware as well as different software titles. They put in like the top 10 or so, I think. But if we see the Switch here, it sold almost 4.5 million units in this last quarter, pushing it up to 89.04 million units sold. The software at 632.4 million units. And this is big for the Switch because this means it has now officially passed the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, and it did it much faster. I mean, the Switch came out in 2017, now here we are in 2021, already passing what was a pretty long generation. I mean, the PS3 and the 360 went on for a while, to the point where people were just absolutely begging for the next generation to start when we got the PS4 and the Xbox One. So the Switch doing it this fast is very impressive, and yes, the question is going to come up a lot now, okay, can it catch the PS2? Because the Wii, I think the Wii is going to happen by the end of this year. I mean, this is as of the end of June, so there's still like another 6 months this year, and obviously we get into the holiday season and we're going to see sales spike heavily there. They do have that OLED Switch as well. I know not everyone's really that like excited or high on the idea of the OLED Switch because the hardware itself inside the chip is still the same, but it's still a new piece of hardware there for the holiday season. So I think the Switch is going to pass the Wii, like at the end of this year, like December 31st, when they show up at the end of January to talk about how they did for the holiday. I think one of the big headlines is going to be the Switch has now passed the Wii, and then it's on to the PS4 and eventually maybe the PS2. And as I mentioned, they did go over their software, and we have to have a talk about this, okay, because we got to stop buying Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. In fact, in this last quarter, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was the second best-selling game, like, of the quarter for Nintendo. Like, we're never going to get Mario Kart 9 at this point, but we can see the page they have set up here with all the different best-selling software they have now, starting with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at the top, just over 37 million units. It sold 1.69 million units in this previous quarter. The only other game that sold better was new Pokemon Snap, and that was just over 2 million units, and it was a brand new game, right? So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has been out basically since launch, and it is still selling this well. Like I said, why would you make Mario Kart 9 if this still is selling as well as it is? Anyway, Animal Crossing New Horizons, 33.89 million units, selling 1.26 million in the quarter. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate at 24.77 million, that's selling just under a million. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, also just under a million units sold this past quarter, 23.2 million. Pokemon Sword and Shield at 750,000 this past quarter, 21.85 million. Super Mario Odyssey, 21.4 million. Then we have Super Mario Party, 15.72 million. That one actually sold 930,000 in this previous quarter. Pokemon Let's Go, that being 13.57 million. Splatoon 2, 12.45 million. Ring Fit Adventure has, just continued to roll along here with sales, 11.26 million. That actually sold 1.15 million in this previous quarter, which is very impressive. Super Mario 3 World plus Bowser's Fury is at 6.68 million, already outselling the Wii U version of Super Mario 3D World, that crossing another million in sales this past quarter. Then we have new Pokemon Snap over 2 million. That does not include the sales in Japan, so go ahead and add that on. And we have Miitopia already crossing a million sold, and Mario Golf Super Rush, 1.34 million. I want you to think about that for a second. Mario Golf Super Rush, right, introduced, I know it wasn't for sale that long here in this report, but still, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold more than a brand new game with Mario Golf Super Rush. So we can see how well all of these games are selling. The Switch continues to roll along with its hardware, and I think Nintendo is going to have another breakthrough here with this system, that being the software side of things. They're at about 630 million units of software sold here currently. I feel like the Switch will get them that breakthrough into the 1 billion mark for software. It's something Nintendo's never had, but the way they are rolling along here, getting these systems out to a lot of people buying them up, and then buying the software right away. I mean, the fact that Mario Kart keeps selling, I mean, come on. But that and the fact that they have a ton of games still coming up that should sell reasonably well, yeah, I think this is finally going to be when Nintendo breaks through that 1 billion barrier. Oh, and we did have Nintendo kind of share their outlook for the releases coming up, and nothing really new to get from this, especially when we go into 2022. You still see like Splatoon 3, Project Triangle Strategy, working title 2022, the sequel to Breath of the Wild. That is still set up as 2022. Remember, they said they're aiming for it, so we'll see about that. And the big ones that everyone's asking for, Bayonetta 3 is still to be announced, and then Metroid Prime 4, which again, temporary title there, also to be announced. So nothing really new out of the listings they put out here for their future titles, but so far so good for Nintendo as they roll along, starting with this fiscal year in this quarter. And I'll be curious to see if this holiday they can finally have the Switch become the best-selling home console for Nintendo. Next up, let's talk about that PlayStation 5 NVMe upgrade situation, as more and more of these PlayStation 5 beta codes are going out. I still have not gotten one. I got one for the PS4. So Sony, you gotta send me a code here for the PS5. If I don't have one by this weekend, I think what we'll do is we'll at least go through the steps of installing a third-party heatsink on that Samsung 980 Pro that I have, just to make sure it fits in there, and you can see how the process is exactly for installing it, and then I'll also know if that third-party heatsink works, which is actually a pretty cheap heatsink in terms of pricing and all that. But if you are kind of shopping around and trying to figure out which ones to pick out, we do have a list that's being compiled as we go along for people who are testing these different drives in the PS5 with that beta. You can see it here, and it's a pretty extensive list as we have all kinds of comments around heat sinks and if they're included. I mean, we have ones that I haven't even really heard of here. Things like the Titanium Micro, the Plex Door, and then we have Add Link, but then we have the basics with Samsung 980, the Patriot Viper, and it even tells you which ones include the heat sinks and which ones will close up fine and meet like the height requirements that Sony has. Remember, they're giving us measurements now, and you have to double check your heatsink height, but here it looks like we have pricing as well as if it fits and closes up fine. They also have some top recommendations, which includes the Seagate FireCuda 530, the Samsung 980 Pro, and the Western Digital Black SN850. Pretty basic stuff there, but if you do have, let's say, an NVMe drive that you've already picked up and it doesn't have a heatsink, they also have top recommended storage expansion compatible heatsinks, ones that will fit when you cover it up with that piece of metal and it doesn't kind of press up against it. And you can see a couple of them here, and the names aren't exactly great. They don't roll off the tongue exactly like the Ilutang M.2 2280 heatsink. Some of these are double-sided, others are not. I mean, if they fit and it's double-sided, sure, go with the double-sided heatsink there. But I still recommend picking up one that already has a heatsink. Like, if you haven't grabbed one yet and you're thinking about it, just find one that's recommended that already has the heatsink attached. I am curious if like these NVMe drives get too hot, like if you're using it with, like if you don't have a heatsink on it, will it have some sort of thermal throttling? What exactly happens? Can the PS5 detect if the NVMe drive is getting too hot and shut down? These are questions that I have that maybe we'll test at some point. Could be interesting to see what happens, but we have also had people test pretty slow NVMe drives and they seem to just work, and I guess some loading is just a bit slower than the PS5 expects. Doesn't sound like a great idea, and I recommend going with ones that are tested and higher quality. But definitely go through the list if you're looking for an NVMe drive for your PlayStation 5 when this, I guess, firmware comes out of beta and gets officially distributed to PlayStation 5 systems. Next up, let's talk about Mario Golf Super Rush and the big update that Nintendo announced yesterday morning, and then it just went live later on in the day. And we were expecting a big update, and this one's pretty close to launch, and I saw some people asking questions around if this actually had to be an update a month later, which we'll come back to here in a second. Let's take a look at the tweet here. This put out by Nintendo of America, where they say, for Mario Golf Super Rush scores a free update. later today. We have a new mode, that being ranked match, which is pretty cool. A new character, Toadette. New course, New Donk City. Remember, they showed that in the trailer for the game, and people were wondering, okay, where's New Donk City? Okay, yeah, it's an update, great. And then improved motion controls. I tried the motion controls out a little bit. I didn't play with them too much, but I will say the motion controls are a lot of fun. If you have friends or family members that you're playing with, it can actually be a pretty good time doing that. But I did look at this update and I said, did this need to be an update? Like, the thing with this, and it's something I don't know if people are really thinking too much about, we're getting these updates for these Nintendo games, and it's pretty clear why they're doing it, because it keeps the game updating and keeping it in conversation, and it's things they can advertise to continue sales as they go along, because Nintendo's really big right now on evergreen sales for games that don't really drop in price that often. But an update like this, a month later, one they even showed in the initial trailer for the game, then talking about updates, probably could have just gone on the cartridge, and the fact that it's not means that, somewhere way off in the distance, if the update's not available, this content wouldn't be available, and I would much rather it just be on the cartridge. Like I said, I know it's a strategy Nintendo's going with, and it's really cool to get free updates that are fairly substantial like this for these different games. I just feel like I would prefer for the game to just have them at launch, and we don't have to think about, oh, what's the next big update, because then you run into situations like we have with Animal Crossing, where like the content just stops for a while, and then they have to come out and say, oh, we are going to do substantial updates now. We just had some issues or some stuff going on behind the scenes, and we weren't able to do these updates. I'd prefer for the game to be as complete as possible at launch on the physical cartridge that I'm buying, rather than just have to cross my fingers and hope that they have some cool ideas planned out for updates. At least they told us that New Donk City was coming, and we were pretty excited for that. But now it's like, all right, what's coming next? Are we just going to get character drops? Do you have other modes and different courses set up? Those are the big questions here. But hey, if you have Mario Golf, definitely check out this update because it looks pretty good. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts, because when I saw them pop up and I saw the game at the top for the software, I was like, I have to throw that in there for fans of the series because it's pretty cool to see it up there. We'll head over to the software for the Famitsu sales charts. We have Neo, The World Ends With You on the Nintendo Switch, topping the charts, 18,799 units. Then number 2, we have The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. At number 3, we have The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. That in there, 14,460 units on the Switch. Then we have Minecraft, Crayon Shin-Chan, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Ring Fit Adventure, Game Builder Garage, Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin, and then Neo The World Ends With You on the PlayStation 4 with 9,248 copies. Moving over to the hardware, the Nintendo Switch at the top, 62,865. The PlayStation 5 looks like they are getting more stock out there, actually selling above the previous week by about 4,500 units. That coming in at 22,641. The Xbox Series had a bit of a dip down to 1,802 units. PlayStation 4 still selling 1,209. Then people are still finding 3DS systems, apparently. I don't know if this is in the back of the stores or what, but 358 units. So it's obviously great to see Neo The World Ends With You at the top there. People have been waiting for this game, this sequel, for a while, so it's cool to see that at least people are going out, picking it up, and it wasn't like a crazy busy time here with this week, so that's really why it topped the charts, because generally we'll see some big time releases, 100,000 copies or something, but having Neo The World Ends With You at the top there, 18,000 or so copies on the Switch, then also the PlayStation 4 version at 9,000 or so, that's not a bad opening week, I would say, for Neo The World Ends With You in Japan. I'm very curious to see how it'll do in things like the MPD sales charts, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that, but great news there for fans of The World Ends With You in the series. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, the Switch is now at 89 million units sold as of June 30th. Will it pass the PS2 at 155 million before it's all said and done? 41% said yes, the Switch will pass the PS2. 59% said no, it won't quite get there. I think at this point, it's pretty obvious the Switch should become the second best selling home console because it's probably going to pass the PS4 as well in its lifetime. And running up to the PS2 is going to be the big question. It comes down to how Nintendo handles the second half of the Switch's life and how long they can have this generation go on for. Now, if they don't have plans to have some sort of Switch Pro or a revision that adds more power to it while still remaining in this generation, and they just want to go to the next gen Switch sooner than maybe a lot of people are expecting, like in the next 2 or 3 years, yeah, then they probably won't catch the PS2. But if this generation really has another 4 to 5 years in it, I mean, sure, it could could potentially catch the PS2 at 155 million units. The Switch concept works, and Nintendo's figured out a way to sell several systems to one household, which has helped them get to 89 million units already. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from GT saying, is the world really so doomed that a character being free and unlockable through gameplay is weird? I was more or less being over the top with that statement, but over the last 20 years, things have really changed in gaming. I mean, we're seeing a lot of things with microtransactions, free-to-play games, all of this. It used to be back in the day, you just buy a disc or a cartridge and you go home with it, and that was the entire game. And I know we have advantages now that we are connected pretty much across the board for these different companies to update the games and fix things, but like, I don't know, back in the day, just getting the game, going home, there were unlockable characters there that you didn't have to pull out your credit card for. There were cheat codes. Remember those? Yeah, those used to be, I mean, really commonplace in a lot of games, and now you just don't really see that anymore. The one thing I would have liked to have seen with Super Monkey Ball is if they just didn't really advertise that beat was in the game and it was an unlockable thing. That's the other part that I miss. It feels like these companies always want to tell us about these really cool things in the game ahead of time, and I kind of miss that feeling of being surprised when you would unlock a character in the game. Like with the original Smash Brothers on the Nintendo 64, when you would unlock the different characters in the game, like, that was really cool. So I would like to see that more going forward from these companies. I know it helps them advertise the game, but getting that really cool unlockable character as a surprise is something I miss. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. So here's Nintendo's financial report. How far do you think the Switch can go here? I think you hit 120, 130, 140 million units before it's all said and done. Let me know about that. And then, are we ever getting Mario Kart 9, or is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe just going to continue selling every single quarter? Also, what about the PlayStation 5 and those NVMe drives? Have you already picked one out? And then this whole thing with Mario Golf, these Nintendo updates, do you like the idea of them having a roadmap and dropping these updates as we go along? Or would you rather them just have the game, for the most part, complete and ready to go at launch? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.